All right. Thank you for joining me on Your Career Day. I'm Brian Banks. Can you give us your name?
I'm Titus Heagins. Good
And,
morning.
all right. And where is your hometown?
Hometown. So I live in Durham, North Carolina, which is sort of in the middle of the state between the ocean and between the mountains.
Okay. And what is your career title?
I don't know of a career title.
Okay.
Um, I call myself a documentary fine art photographer. Uh, some days I call myself a documentary portraitist. And perhaps this is all because I work for myself. I don't I don't I don't work for any well, I do work for other people at times,
Hmm.
but I am the sole proprietor, I guess. Yeah.
Okay. All right. And what does your job entail?
So my job typically entails photographing people. Um, At times, I work for NGOs, non-governmental organizations. I work for nonprofits, and then I do my own particular personal projects. So literally, someone will hire me to photograph something, someone that they're working with or working
Hmm.
on. Uh, Typically, I work a lot out of the country.
Hmm.
And so, I travel to places and I photograph their projects
Okay.
for either their yearly reports or for other types of reports that they need images to document what they're doing or the effects of what they're trying to do.
Okay. Um, and what type of education is required?
Well, there's no real um, there's no real educational requirement to become a photographer.
Hmm.
I think that's one of the terrible mishaps about this profession. So literally, if you have a camera,
Hmm.
you can get a business card, you can set yourself up in a business and say that you're a photographer. Now, um, what I think is required, I do think that that education is very important. Uh,
Hmm.
I do believe that to do this work, I do believe that a person should have minimally a bachelor's degree.
Hmm.
And it doesn't necessarily have to be in art, but I do believe that formal education is necessary to understand what you're trying to do, uh, to understand who you're trying to do it with, what those goals are.
Hmm.
That's where I believe education fits in.
Cool. Perfect. Now, what type of person is best suited to be a photographer?
Well, I think the person that's best suited to be a photographer is one, I think you have to be curious.
Hmm.
Two, I think that you have to be able to, let's see, I don't think that people who are, as we say, set in their ways, unable to change
Hmm.
in, regarding a situation, I don't think that they would be good in this type of work. I do believe that you need to be able to adjust very quickly to changing circumstances.
Okay.
And I think that um, the other another thing I think that's best suited is someone that's interested in doing research, because the more you research whatever you're photographing, the more you'll know about it, the more you'll understand, and that will increase your ability to create the sort of images that will either satisfy your employer or you.
Okay, all right. So what was the road to your current position? How'd you get to where you are right now?
Well, I'm sort of this accidental photographer. Um, Initially, so I came to this work late in life,
Mhm,
as a profession, and I became a photographer because I was actually fired from a job as a program director as a historical foundation because I had taken a trip to Cuba and I'd taken a group of Duke students there to the World Youth Festival. When I came back, my boss uh, basically said, "We don't need your services anymore." And there's a lot more to it than that.
yeah,
But that was the, the sort of short story about
right,
it. Yeah.
okay, all right. So what makes this career as a photographer fun, interesting, exciting, or all the above?
Well, one of the things that after I was fired from the programming director job,
Mhm,
uh, because of where I live, and I wanted to move. My wife, is here and was at the time she was an assistant vice president at Duke University,
mhm,
and she didn't want to leave. So what I started thinking about, what could I do where I could be in charge of my life?
mhm,
And photography was one of the things that I could do on my own terms, the
yeah,
way that I wanted to, choose who I worked with, choose who I worked for.
right,
So that's sort of why I ended up here.
okay, all right. What advice would you give to someone that might want to follow in your footsteps?
I don't. Um, so now I'm doing a workshop for young African American women photographers for the Light Factory. And even though I didn't say this to them, but one of the things I would say to someone that was interested in doing this work, I'd ask them, are they crazy? Well, the thing is that I find it rewarding what I do, but there are a lot of difficulties. Um, so for me, a typical workday with someone, I'm in another country. I'm not staying in a five-star hotel.
Mhm,
And I get up at about 4 a.m. to go somewhere, and it may take me 2 to 3 hours to get there.
mhm,
And I work all day up until probably about 8 or 9 o'clock at night. I come back. I have to work with the images that I've captured that day.
mhm,
So I'm usually up until midnight or so. Somewhere in somewhere in between there, I've got to get something to eat, and I've got to start that regimen again. So I'm dealing with probably 3 to 4 hours sleep,
yeah,
and I do that for a week or 2 weeks. Um, so it's very demanding,
mhm,
and uh, that there are dangers. A lot of times I'm working in countries that I don't speak the language. I work with a fixer, someone that's a guide, that does translations for me. And it's interesting work. I like it,
mhm,
but I don't say that everyone is actually cut out for it, for doing it the way that I do it.
right,
So I would suggest that they really understand that they have to do a lot of research, that this isn't simply about, I've got a camera and I'm going to go and match the shutter. There have been places that I've worked where when I'm working with other photographers from all around the world, and I go in places that many of them are unwilling to go into. And so you need to be able to control your fear. You need to be able to work with people that whose culture is different from yours,
Right.
whose outlook on life is quite different from yours. You have to do it in a way that's respectful and in a way that makes them interested and also to desire to work with you.
Great. Well, thank you, Titus. I really appreciate you spending time with us and sharing some insight on what it is to be a photographer. And I really look forward to seeing your work all over. I know it's in a few different museums and things. So I will look forward to sharing that work with our viewers. And thank you once again for being with me.
Okay, good enough. And as I always say now, go blue.